The Morning Woodward Show here on Woodward Sports Network. Jeff Iafredi, Sam Flannel as usual, and JB and Alex and Lucas are joining us as well. The crew's all here, but we have a very special guest today, my good friend, Brandon Dent, a.k.a. Detroit Kool-Aid, our Pistons beat reporter for Woodward Sports. And he's done a great job. Yesterday was Troy Weaver's press conference, and he said a lot of interesting things, and we got to get my good friend Brandon Dent's opinion on it. Brandon, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great.
I'm good,
I think, trying to process everything. You had Steve Yzerman's press conference. You had Troy Weaver's press conference. You were there.
Yes,
and again, no players were there this time. The entire team was not also there. So there you go. But regardless, the media was. And you guys had an opportunity to speak to Troy Weaver before the draft. And he did kind of clear up a lot of things we were already wondering beforehand. And one of the biggest things, I guess the biggest arguments that I find myself getting into is the best player available versus the fit argument. And I want to ask you about that first, and then we'll get to just some of the takeaways from his press conference.
Yeah.
But when you think about fit versus BPA, and I completely understand the thought process behind both. I understand BPA, you won 17 games, even though, quite frankly, the 17 games I think is missing a lot of context. It's not just 17 games with an entire healthy lineup. Because if that was the case, then yeah, you don't have a good team at all. You don't have a relevant team. But as much as they faced, the amount of different lineups they had, Cade being out, yes, they won 17 games, but you can argue it's still a bright future with Cade and Jaden Ivey. So I lean more on fit, but fit with still high upside. That's how I look at it. Taylor Hendricks to me is a good fit, but also there's plenty of room for him to grow. He's 19 years old. So again, I get both arguments from your perspective. You talked to Troy Weaver, you asked him questions. What are your thoughts on his response to that question? Basically the response of, hey, I'm not bunting. We're going for the long ball here. What was your takeaway?
Look, I loved everything that Troy was saying yesterday because I think it showed that he's consistent. It showed that he's going to continue to be aggressive. And we consistently go back and forth between this aspect of fit versus best player available. And I think with Troy, it's always about what's the best asset available. So if this player is somebody that's on your squad, you expect this player to be somebody that you can either depend on the roster. And we said this with Jeremy Grant, or if you're going to trade him, then it's a player that's going to get you a haul, just like Jeremy Grant got back, like the Jalen Duren do.
Yep.
So, I don't know. Sometimes, because it would be nice to have like a guy like a Taylor Hendricks or a Brandon Miller or somebody like that you could have a shot at to slot in at that wing. Mm-hmm. It seems almost perfect. But when I hear Troy speak, if there's a guy there that he believes can reach a star potential, that's over, the guy that maybe is the better fit, I feel like he's going to go with the star potential and give himself the best opportunity at assets.
And another thing, you talk about Troy and I guess the philosophy of trading that fifth overall pick, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think my instincts would at least let me know they'll stay there at 5, or if they move back, they move back. What are your, I guess, early predictions on it? What scenario do you see? Do you see a more likely scenario of Troy staying put at 5, or do you think a trade back and maybe getting 2 first-round picks and getting 2 chances to swing early on, at least in the lottery, are possible? What are your thoughts?
That's where it gets interesting. When you're talking about best fit available, if he actually does that, then I don't think he's going to stay put at number 5. Mm-hmm. And everything that he continued to talk about, to me, it resonates that he's going to wind up either getting multiple first-round picks one way or the other, whether he's trading that 31st and some other assets to move up back into the first round, or whether he's trading that number 5 to maybe a team like Utah and maybe picking up a couple more shots in this first-round draft pick, which is something I want him to do. I listen, the way that, and I got the opportunity to ask him this question, man, about the way he's been able to pluck talent, whether it's been first-round or second-round, guys like Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, guys like Isaiah Livers, and then even Jalen Duren at number 13. Like, the type of talent he is, to be able to understand, you got to get him. And he said he was high on his draft board. Troy Weaver's ability to assess and evaluate players, and he spoke on it, being on the scene, being at the AAU camps, being at the, all of the different Team USA events and things of that nature.
Right.
He kind of knows who these players are. He does. And so, I don't know, man. I feel like this draft is going to get crazy after the number 2 pick, man. And I think that Troy is going to be somebody uniquely involved in it.
Kool-Aid, I have to ask, because despite what people think in the chat, I definitely know that I'm not an expert on all things, and Brandon, I really respect your opinion when it comes to NBA basketball, particularly the Pistons. So at the number 5 overall pick, if the Pistons keep the pick and make it, is there anybody that you like at that option more than others?
Man, that's a really good question. I've been like 100% all in on Jarris Walker. I liked his ability to be this kind of two-way player. I liked his kind of 3-4 fit rather than more like a Stewart 4-5. I liked his ability to be able to kind of like he didn't get the opportunity to fully show his capabilities at Houston, but I liked his ability to handle. I liked his ability to be able to play make, and he looked like a player that could complement Cade and Ivy, and then feel, as it relates to best fit, be able to kind of play that role on the wing for us. And I liked it, somebody that will probably come in with low ego, but I hear that the motor is like 100% is there. So I like Jarris Walker, but Jeff put me on to Taylor Hendricks.
Let's go.
And I was like, you know what? He's a little bit taller. I like kind of what he brings to the table. I do. From both ends of the court. I'm looking for somebody that can impact this team as a two-way player. And that's where, and I don't know if it's controversial or not, but that's where I've kind of cooled off on Cam Whitmore. He was somebody that was a little bit higher on the draft board for me, but now it's guys like Jarris Walker, Taylor Hendricks, and if you're talking about that home run hit, then I think you have to include Asar Thompson, because it's looking like the Pistons are going to have their pick of a lot of different players between 5 and 10.
Yeah, that quote by Troy, basically the whole "I don't bunt, I only hit long balls," that applies at least to me to Asar Thompson. At least in my opinion, I think Amon's going to be gone by then. I would love Amon, but Asar is. It sounds like that's the more boom or bust prospect. The Thompson twins, guys that have tons of potential, but also there's that uncertainty, especially with the shooting form, the things like that, playing off ball. Asar actually played off ball his whole basketball career to Amon, so there's already that in place. I wouldn't mind Asar at all. I know the Hendricks thing for me is, part of it is, and I don't agree with trading back to take the guy you want, because again, if you stay at 5, you get your pick of the litter. You get your option. If you like Jarris, you can take him. If you like Hendricks, you can take him. But if you trade back, you lose control of the board, which I don't like for somebody like Troy and Brad and other GMs that can identify talent. I hate losing control of the board, but I also understand the philosophy if you're getting more assets. I want to bring up one of the quotes that Troy made, and I don't think Brandon Miller will be there. I think he'll be gone. It's already been reported Charlotte loves him. Speaking of fit, Charlotte loves him as a fit with LaMelo Ball over Scoot, who, again, drafting number 2, you're passing on Scoot Henderson for Brandon Miller. Like, can we talk about that for a second? And also the second part of it is, Troy said that the basketball character matters. We don't want anybody coming in and disrupting the locker room. Is that also kind of pointed at Brandon Miller if he falls? Because I don't see a scenario. Because, again, it's kind of like the Lions with Jalen Carter. Like, I love Jalen Carter. I love Brandon Miller. I don't know why I keep liking guys with past, but it is what it is. I got problems. I do. I'll admit it. But if there is a scenario where he's there at 5, there's no way in hell that I would assume Troy would take him. I just don't. I don't with his baggage he's coming in with.
That one is a tricky one, because it's not necessarily him that's the person that's done something. I think all these guys in the NBA, like all of us, man, people have made some mistakes. People have had some ups and some downs, and the NBA has been a league of second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth chances. So the guys that are on the roster, they're not squeaky clean. They're not going to be, the church mices. They're just not.
Right.
It just is what it is. But he's looking for people who understand the opportunity that they are getting. And Brandon Miller strikes me as somebody who's going to understand that opportunity. When you get into the NBA, the type of pedigree he seems like he comes from, I believe that he's going to take full advantage of it. And that's why Troy said it gets pretty dicey after number 1. That was a quote that caught my ears, because those GMs are going to know what's going on. They're going to be talking to other GMs. They're going to know the types of deals that may be going down or may be talked about. And with him saying that it may get dicey after number 1, and then you got Charlotte coming out and saying, we're going to take Brandon Miller number 2, does Portland really take Scoot Henderson number 3? See, that's what I'm saying. That is going to get really crazy. Our team's really jumping up to say Scoot Henderson is a superstar? Right. Because if he's not, then does he slip to 4? And then what? You see what I'm saying? Like, this draft could get crazy quickly. And I guess this is why we've been hearing things like Amon could go as high as number 3. It seems like he would fit best with Portland there, but I feel like with Charlotte announcing Brandon Miller at number 2 and Scoot, I don't know if he's necessarily a fit with Portland. This draft is about to get wild.
So, Brandon, by definition of wild, could it be wild enough that either Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller fall to number 5? Do you think there's any shot in any way, shape, or form?
That's what I've been pondering since I kind of saw that tweet go out, and it's interesting. If it does, then man, the Pistons are sitting kind of in this ultimate seat of power. Like the best case scenarios, like I thought they had last season. We were all sitting here saying there's no way that Ivy falls to number 5, and we needed a team to do something like that. We kept saying we need the Kings to king. We kept saying that, and I think that they did. I really believe that they did, and it gave Troy Weaver the opportunity to take a guy in Jaden Ivey that even then a lot of people had questions about. But early on we identified, well, what was he asked to do? Right. What situations and opportunities did he have to be able to present the type of player that we actually saw him turn out to be? And Troy Weaver identified it. Since the Killian Hayes kind of Tyrese Halliburton thing, where you guys had to think about it, initially they took Killian Hayes because of where he was rated, and it was kind of this best fit available, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I feel like, was that even a Troy Weaver pick? Because since that, it's been a completely different way that he's drafted, and it's been what he said back to his kind of DC roots when he was on the scene with these players. Right. Now I'm seeing him going after the guys that he knows kind of on this college circuit, these guys that he has connections to, and that's why I think the Thompson twins are someone to look at. He really, 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 from everything that I have heard, liked Kevin Ollie. So he's going to have some type of information on those guys as well and understand if they are ready for the next step or not. I hope, for the sake of potential, and I don't know if you all believe like I do, I feel like the home run pick is Asar Thompson if he's sitting there at number 5.
Yeah. And that definitely applies to what the language Troy used for swing for the fences. That's a prospect I think you could argue that. The last question I have for you, and Weaver kind of spoke on the CBA as well, and again, avoiding the second apron, because that's a big thing. The Suns basically just said, F it, and Matt Ishbia is like, let's go, which I respect, but Weaver understands also when you have teams that are going to do that, there's going to be available players that they're going to have to get rid of. It's just how it works. And if they get a good enough offer for DeAndre Ayton, they're willing to trade him, the Suns. So not saying they should get DeAndre Ayton, but in general, he spoke on that. And he said, quote, there's some thought there. Teams will really start looking at the roster comp and how it plays out with their contract. It's definitely some work and thought to make sure we're ready. So I think that just kind of clarifies what we already assumed, which the Pistons with Monty Williams, they want to win sooner than later. I think that's very fair, even though they gave him a long-term deal. Yeah. What do you think the mindset is for Troy Weaver approaching this draft with the number 5 pick? Is it, hey, we're optimistic, we'll take whoever's at 5 and we'll roll with it? Or do you think there's more pressure to get a deal done to go trade for a proven player so we could speed up this process for Monty Williams? Which side do you think they're leaning more so on?
Man, Troy has shown that he can do it all, right? Like last year, he did both with Alec Burks and Jalen Duren in one trade. So, with Troy Weaver, I believe he's going to come out and have himself available to do everything, which, honestly, he's afforded himself the luxury to take a player at number 5 and not have to sell out and say, I have to get a veteran guy because of the other part of that quote. It's interesting you brought that up because that's what I had queued up here. Him talking about the CBA, he said, there could be some vulnerable situations we could take advantage of, and we are prepared to. So he doesn't necessarily have to rest on his laurels with that draft pick. He can go out there with the $30 million that they have. And we already hear of some players that are a little bit disgruntled, and he's going to be in prime position to be able to make something happen with that cap space as well as some of the assets that they have if they have to. If they have to get another draft pick to make something work, they have guys on this roster that they can move for that purpose. So I do, the way he was talking, man, it seems like that might be definitely a part of their strategy. Whether it's draft night or not, I definitely know as they move into free agency, deeper into free agency and after the draft, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pistons went on ahead and made one of those trades. They've done it with Jeremy Grant. They did it with Bojan Bogdanovic. And now you're going to have more teams probably looking to, like you said, find themselves on the other side of this penalty coming if they're over the apron.
Yeah.
So I think the Pistons are going to be beneficiaries here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, appreciate you for joining us, Brandon. You do a great job, man.
you.
Always
Thank
a
you.
pro. Detroit Kool-Aid, Brandon Dent, beat reporter for Woodward Sports for the Detroit Pistons. Stay tuned, Woodward Pistons and Kool-Aid. We'll have a big day tomorrow as well, draft day. So stay tuned for that. We'll have a live show for everybody, so stick around for that. But before we do, we talk about this roster needing a haircut, the Pistons roster.